Cafe Conversations by Kate Tucker and Nikki King has been created to be of service to the collective consciousness. It is our intention to create a simple and accessible portal for transformation, a place where stories, beliefs, and triggers can be held unjudged in love, a space where truth is ever-changing. These conversations are spoken from integrity and are brought forth to invite the listener to have an experience of themselves that allows for reflection, change, and expansion. Our singular desire is to invite the collective to wander more freely and fearlessly. It is ultimately about love. Please do not listen to this podcast while driving or operating machinery.
Funny what we were just saying about commitment feels like a really powerful place to start.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I can feel some of the sort of resistance to that in the sense of it's something I've been playing with a lot over the last few months as someone whose highest value is freedom. Commitment's always been a bit of a, I don't want to say dirty word, but yeah, something I've always kept at arm's length. And what I'm recognising more and more is actually commitment and freedom are the same thing. Again, two sides of the same coin. And how much by committing to things, like really truly committing, that actually it frees up so much in my energy body, with practical time, with, yeah, it's a really fascinating exploration.
I wonder if commitment is the antidote for resistance. Kind of those times in life where you're like, I am doing this, and there isn't even an option for you to be stopped in showing up, in showing up for whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think even commitment to surrendering actually moves you beyond resistance. Because there's something that happens in the commitment that is it feels very embodied. So it's like when you commit with your body, yeah, it's almost like you can go, I don't want to say bypass, but you can go beyond the resistance, you can move through the resistance easier when your body knows what it is that you're asking of it.
And when you're fully whole, I think commitment makes you whole. It brings all parts of you in the same direction. My guides were channeling about decision making, and they were saying that indecision is really fear of your power. Fear of your power is really perceiving power as overpowering, when actually power is vulnerability. And vulnerability is power. They are a two-way flow of the expression of the self. And the only way you can move through into the merging of vulnerability and power, and away from this perception of overpowering, the only way you can move into kind of that higher understanding of what power is as an act of vulnerability is through commitment. Is by committing fully. It's like if you don't commit fully, you never come into the vulnerability. Therefore your vulnerability never becomes your power. Therefore power is just the power struggle we've had in the third dimensional perception of it. As opposed to nature's way.
Yeah, and I think we were talking about this the other day in terms of, I can feel within that, it's like being in the eye of the storm rather than in the perpetual kind of like what the storm's creating. And it's like actually the commitment brings you into the centre, and from the centre you get to make choices from an empowered place, as opposed to constantly being in the washing machine of the storm itself, just being battered around. And actually the being in the eye of the storm is an incredibly vulnerable place to be, because you're aware of the power of it and what it can do, but you're also in the still space.
Yeah.
And you're right, there is something about the commitment to it that puts you in that still space of being able to choose and make really conscious choices, and not being on the receiving end and reacting or being reactive to something.
But if we explore commitment, as you're speaking, I'm like, if we explore commitment from the consciousness of power being about overpowering, and so when you're describing the storm, that's being overpowered. If you're in that energy, you're being overpowered by the situation, by your vulnerability is essentially being overpowered. And to me, when I think of commitment, I can feel my consciousness as a bit of a freedom seeker myself, automatically going to this idea of being bound and being overpowered by the commitment itself, where it almost feels like this insight is an invitation to explore what it is to commit from the perception that power and being overpowered are two very different things. And so a commitment isn't something that binds you or traps you or suppresses you or overpowers you. And I'm almost like, what does commitment look like then?
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because as you're saying that, it's like I can feel how much freedom there is within the commitment, because it's not... It moves me personally out of a space of control, which is also where I quite like to be.
Yeah.
So it moves me out of a space of control and being controlled by a situation or by another or by myself, because I'm committing to the not knowing. I'm committing to being present. I'm committing to, again, the mystery of anything and everything being possible.
And then it's like, what's the commitment? Is the ultimate commitment just to show up? Is that the commitment? You know, how do you put a commitment? My brain almost wants to understand, like, well, what is, if there's no bind, if there's no overpowering, then what is the commitment? You see what I mean? It's like my conditioned mind is just like, it almost needs to understand what the commitment actually is then. I think it might be something to do with showing up. although what keeps coming to my mind is that amazing thing that woman in the hub on Wednesday said, where she just said we were allowed to grow like a flower.
And I think that's because that then brings to me this whole question around what are we here for, and that actually just being is enough. I don't like the words enough anymore. Actually, it's more than enough. It's like we don't have to do anything to be valuable. So it's kind of like so you're right. It's like, so what is the commitment, the action?
Or is it a commitment, as you're speaking, like, is it a commitment, one of the laws of light Starlight has been channeling a lot about, is the law of intention, which is that all energy flows through intention. But the big breakthrough for me in the channeling of that was understanding that as well as a personal intention, there is always the primary intention of the universe, which is to grow. And I almost wonder if that commitment is the commitment to grow. Not necessarily grow in any direction or in any way, but just a commitment to grow, which runs through it runs through even more than nature. It runs through the kind of pulse of the universe. Is this commitment, this primal intention to grow.
Because as you're saying that, I can feel that commitment actually comes before. It's like a soul choice. So it's almost like that commitment is there before we come here. And then actually it's just it's a remembering and a choice that we're making each and every day in a way.
A ritual of recommitting in a way.
Yes. To being embodied.
To growing.
To do it, yeah.
To this primal intention.
Yeah.
And actually I remember when quite a long time ago I decided to change some of my personal life priorities and make one of them a priority to grow. And actually there's something very liberating in that, because it doesn't really matter what you go through, there is always growth available. Like, it kind of takes you out of the perception of a situation being good or bad, because if growth is one of your priorities, pretty guaranteed that even if you're going through something quite traumatic or something quite difficult, that priority is going to be fulfilled. And so it almost brings an energy of an allowance to anything that you are experiencing. And I actually wonder if all that resistance energy is actually just the opposite of that commitment to grow. If it's just the reversal of growth energy.
And I think I can really feel that, and I think, there's the fear of, and I think that's what I was meaning in terms of like the commitment to being in body and having this experience on the earthly plane. And it's that I can then feel the fear of committing to being here. And for a lot of, energetically for people on a personal level, but also collectively, it can be quite hard to keep committing to being here. And I don't mean that necessarily in a literal sense, but it's not the easiest place to be at times. And it's almost a commitment to, when you say about about growing, it's the commitment to remembering that we're not separate, and yet we're committing to being here in order to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also full growth. Full growth, I am starting to understand, is literally growing out of your old identity. And so like a seed stops being a seed in order to become a tree, or a caterpillar stops being a caterpillar in order to become a butterfly. And so there is this kind of almost total ego death that happens in full growth. And I think because we're such a mind-driven and egocentric society, we almost have a phobia of that. You know, some of that resistance is the fact that, you know, in order to fully grow, you kind of have to transcend the identity of the self. The sun has to give itself up to the summer has to give itself up to become the winter. You know, there is this total I don't want to say self-sacrifice because it feels wrong, but there is this total transcendence that I think I'm scared of it.
Well, it's death, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
Back to that one.
And you're right, because we have the capacity to think, which is extraordinary in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's, you know, our minds are such, evolved machines is the wrong word, but yeah, you know, there's just our capacity to be able to analyze, think, you know, is extraordinary. And yet then when you break it down, there is such a simplicity. You know, when you talk about just the caterpillar choose to become a butterfly. Maybe it does actually. Maybe as a soul it does.
Or does it commit?
It commits to.
Does it commit? I mean, is that where we go wrong? Do we think it's about choice when actually it's about commitment. And committing to the self in the moment and the growth of the self in the moment? Is that I'm just throwing it into the conversation, but I'm like, is that where we as humans hit our stumbling blocks? Is that we think it is about choice where actually it's about commitment?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it brings up something for me that I kind of go round and round on, which is, you know, freedom, free will, and there are so many times in my life where I can pinpoint where the divine orchestration that has been happening for years and years and years, and I look at it and go, really? How much free will do I actually have? So it's almost like commitment and choice are kind of running parallel, or are...
And are they a two-way flow?
Yeah.
You know, my guides are on and on about this two-way flow of the same energy. And that one simply is these two-way flows of energies that run through so many things. One is a contraction or a reversal, and one is an expansion and a forwards energy. And it's interesting what you say about free will, because one of the other laws of the light that we've been exploring, and even the word law I have a slight problem with, but that's what my guides have been referring to them.
It always feels better to me when you spell it Lore.
But these laws that explain, they're laws because they explain the mechanics of the universe, as opposed to laws that you have to abide by. So they're instructions for how to live in overflow. And one of the other ones is the law of divine trust, which is that yes, you have free will, but so does the planet.
Yeah.
That our free will is not the only free will here, and that actually, and that's where you get into this thing of like, you are co-creating your path. It's not just a place of total free will. In fact, our free will belongs to a free will of this planet, and the free will of our oneness with this planet, and then the planet's free will belongs to the free will of the universe. And so our perception of free will at the moment is very egocentric as well. Whereas it's actually like we find a new level of trust when we understand that yes, we have free will, but our free will belongs to greater cycles. And in order to be fully realized, must align with the free will of the evolution of the planet, and the evolution of the tribe on the planet, and the evolution of the universe. And actually how you do that is by coming round, all of these laws are interconnected, so it's by coming back round to the law of intention, and remembering that the primary intention of the universe is to grow. So if your free will is against growth and is in reversal to growth, it may manifest, but only partly, because it's not aligned with the primary intention of the universe. So it's about kind of how to come into alignment. And there's a part of my ego that doesn't like all of this stuff. There's a part of my ego that's like, that's not how I want the world to be. And yet, walking my path, I have learned the hard way that actually not everything, that actually it's not just about how I want the world to be or how I want the universe to be. That sometimes things are not how I want them to be. And in accepting that is a huge amount of growth and evolution and enrichment.
I think what I'm feeling as you're talking is one the resistance parts of me, and kind of wanting to just almost change the subject. It's really interesting. It's like my being is just like doesn't want to understand this. It's like no, not playing. And I think it's because there's a part that what I'm feeling as you're talking is it comes back to the idea it's not linear. Growth and evolution are not linear, and yet that's the only way that my mind can understand it, in the sense of I have a little bit of resistance to the idea of growth, because it's almost like, well, what if I don't want to grow? What if that isn't what I'm here to do? What if that's that's also something I've just been told? And it's almost like I can feel there's a bubbling energy underneath of I always kind of what always resonates for me is creating upon creation. That's the only way that I can understand it in terms of what we're here to do, or what we're here to experience, or what's available to us.
But then it's so interesting what you say about linear, because not only am I starting to understand, is it not linear, but also every concept we have about creation and life at this time has not yet joined the dots about how all of those other laws match together. It's like we like to look at kind of the law of manifesting as one law, and the law of abundance as another. We like to look at these kind of things as very separate entities, essentially, and actually to truly understand the mechanics of energy and form, which I would call life happening, is you have to start to kind of understand how all of these mechanics work together. So how does free will fit in to growth? How does free will fit into karma? You know, like how do these all of these things that we kind of understand as separate concepts and philosophies work together? Because one thing I have kind of begun to understand is that everything is true.
Yes.
Everything is true, and every truth makes up the whole. And actually part of what ascension for me is about moving through this idea that there is only one truth or one way into just the exploration of how the mechanics of all of it work together.
And it's really interesting when you use the term ascension as well, because I've been playing with the idea that, in a way, if you've got 7.5 billion people on the planet, obviously I'm aware that, not 7.5 billion people aren't going to have an idea of ascension or what that means to them, but it's like there is a possibility for 7.5 billion people to have their own truth, their own idea about what ascension is, and therefore there isn't one absolute.
I absolutely agree with you there. Like I kind of feel like, and that's where co-creation and freedom comes into it. It's like, you take the mechanics, you take the paints, you take the materials, and you are free to do with them what you will. But the more that we can understand the materials we're working with, surely the more freedom we have. It's a bit like the more a musician understands the scales or an artist understands his materials, the more we are actually able to break those boundaries and go outside the box of them in a way.
And then I really, and then there is no division, there are no boundaries. Actually, no, I don't want to say boundary, but there is no separation. And I really like what you were saying about, it's not just us who have free will. And I can really then feel it's like, actually when the death of the ego occurs, it's like, then we can see that everything, other planets, the whole solar system, galaxies, Mother Earth, all of it, has free will.
and yeah, it's the thing that I am so on at the moment, and it feels like every conversation is coming back to it, is like, yes, there is no separation, and yet there is separation because there is sovereignty.
Yeah.
Because and this is where I'm really starting to understand about why this tantric awakening needs to happen, is because Tantra is the understanding of the dance between sovereignty and oneness. And in everything, in everything, and beyond human to human connection physically, the dance between sovereignty and oneness. And actually, the more that I delve into this in my own personal life and in my own channelings and stuff, the more I realise that we have to be as committed to our sovereignty as to our oneness, because actually boundaries are there. Because if they weren't there, I was in Ibiza and I was looking at this tree and I was like, if that tree wasn't sovereign, like it wouldn't be here, like it would have just merged with the air and the earth, and like it would have just become muddy. Like it's our sovereignty that allows that our free will to not become muddied with all of the other free wills that are going on. And it's actually and actually in order for us to come into actual oneness, we have to be so committed to our sovereignty, because if not, we would get totally merged and melted into a truth that isn't about our free will, or it's like the commitment to our sovereignty is so important.
I absolutely 100% agree. And what's really interesting, and I think I've probably just realised in this moment, is we're not here to go back to a oneness that we knew before. We are here to have an experience, to remember. However, if creation is continually creating upon itself, and we are continually growing and evolving, then it's not a going back to oneness. It's a creating something else.
I totally feel that. And I have started to wonder if this whole Piscean egocentric time has been a time of discovering our sovereignty in order to then experience oneness from a place of sovereignty. Because how much power and vulnerability is there in that? Like how much more creative energy is there in that place of truly knowing what you are as a sovereign self, and knowing the boundaries of where you begin and end, even if they are forever changing.
Yeah, I just suddenly had an image of 7.5 billion gods, for want of a better expression, but sovereign creators creating. And it's almost like that's the potential, isn't it? This isn't about, going back to one perfect time that we remember, or that, from whence we came, but it's like, actually, this is about the potential for every planet, every star, every human to create yet more sovereign entities.
Yeah.
Wow.
Through the dance of oneness. Because creation actually only happens when you come into oneness. Like on a purely biological level. Creation happens when we come into oneness. When we allow what is sovereign to meet with something else that is sovereign. And it is that moment of two sovereign energies coming into oneness that causes creation. Of new sovereign. It's like we are forever coming apart and going back together, and coming apart and going back together. And that's why for me I'm having this bit of a revolution of I've been trying to achieve oneness, when actually what I need to start bringing into myself is the dance of sovereignty and oneness. Because I don't want to be one. I don't want to I don't want to melt. I don't want to become mud. I don't want to not even mud, because mud is sovereign, but like how I see it is like, you know, when you mix all the watercolours together,
just feels murky.
All you get is no colour. Like all you get is like a dirtiness of all of the colours. Like our sovereignty is what essentially keeps us bright. And allows us to keep creating, actually.
Yeah, that is the propulsion forwards. Whether you call it growth or, it's like that is the propulsion forwards.
And so, in terms of this word commitment, would you say that the primal commitment is to show up in your sovereignty?
You know, in a way that almost feels like, I'm exploring this as I'm saying it out loud. It's kind of, even that feels like too much of a, you know, it's because again, there's something for me about simply being. There is no expectation. There's a natural force, I guess, that is happening. But to have a commitment to sovereignty, I mean, they feel like such powerful words, and it feels true to me. I'm just curious how true that would feel to anyone else, or people who aren't on a conscious spiritual path.
My guides, in their message yesterday about vulnerability and power, said that when you express in your truth, which to me is basically what showing up in your sovereignty means, just literally being committed to your truth, almost resiliently and fearlessly and gracefully, but to your truth in that moment, not even to a truth. Like a truth can change, but so fully to the truth in the moment. And they said, when you show up in your truth, the universe, life, creation will bow to your truth, because one of the laws of the universe is that truth is bowed to. And they said what overpowering is trying to force the bow, because you are not willing to show up in your truth. And so it's trying to force the universe or someone else to bow to you whereas if you actually just fully showed up, that bow would happen, that alignment would just happen.
I can really feel that. I guess I'm curious about. I'm curious about people who don't think like this, who don't live from this place, who have as much sovereign right, I'm not sure that's to be here, to express themselves in the world the way that they're expressing themselves, and to be having the experiences that they're having. And I think I'm probably answering my own question here in terms of, actually for me, sovereignty, I have an idea of what sovereignty means, and I think for me, and I think where I'm kind of missing the point for myself, is that actually being sovereign is simply allowing everyone to be who they are and to show up the way they are in the way that they are in the world right now.
Kind of, I almost see it as like being, like how I kind of started to understand sovereignty was by looking at nature and being like, okay, a bee is a sovereign energy and the flower is another sovereign energy, and they are sovereign in that vibrational expression of their essence.
And I guess what I'm, it's like then the buzzard who then swoops down on a rabbit, there's I just keep feeling kind of, sort of felons or people who perceptively are doing wrong, actually are also sovereign beings.
Yeah.
And I think this is an understanding that I have to keep coming back to in my own journey of actually, sovereign doesn't mean
good
other people doing life the way I do it.
Yeah. In fact, it means the opposite.
Yeah.
It means everybody doing their essence and their story.
Yeah.
I mean, you can heal your story, you can change your story, but everybody doing their essence through the filters of their beliefs and stories that are ever changing. And actually this, this kind of perception we have of... It's funny, I had a real breakthrough moment with perceiving good and bad the other day, because I was driving down a country lane and there was a cyclist, and this lane was really long and too small to overtake the cyclist, and so there was a queue of about 15 cars driving in first gear behind this cyclist. And as I was driving, I was suddenly like, wow. In my head, the cyclist is doing the most environmental thing for the planet by riding the bike. But in this moment, the cyclist is actually causing more damage for the planet by being here, because of how much pollution is being created through what's behind the cyclist. And whilst I'm still very pro-cycling and making good choices for the planet, it was just one of those moments where I was like, it is so hard to know what's right or wrong. And actually, you can look at something on one level, and then actually there's so many other layers and stories and levels to this. And actually maybe the best thing we can... It's funny, these laws keep coming through, but one of the other laws we've been channeling about and working with is the law of alignment, which is the law that what is right for you is right for everyone. And that feeling of it being right for you is how you know it's right for everyone, because we are all one. And so it can't be right for you and not right for everyone. And yes, it might have an impact that doesn't feel good for people straight away, or, might give people lessons, etc. But ultimately, how you know you're aligned is if it feels right for you. And then that comes back to Gaia's free will. It's like Gaia also wanted that cyclist there, so I might have judged all of the pollution that happened, but also isn't this level of pollution the thing that is ultimately going to make us change our ways anyway? So,
Yeah.
Good, bad, it's not linear.
No. No, it's not. And I know we've touched on this before, but that I can almost look at any situation in life, be it a president we don't particularly like, or a political leader, and judge it as wrong. And the moment we judge it as wrong, or judge them as wrong, and that's not to say that they're necessarily they're making choices that have an impact on people's ability to discern for themselves whether they want to continue down that path or not, and follow what this person is creating. And for me, if it's waking more people up to be more discerning, to be more sovereign, then it can only be a catalyst. And I'm not going to say good or bad, but it can only be a catalyst.
And a catalyst is growth energy happening,
Yes.
that's why for me this coming back to growth being the primary intention of the universe feels so good, because it almost takes you away from that human mind analysis of good and bad.
Yes.
It's like, is it creating growth? If it's creating growth, then can I surrender to it? Can I stop resisting it? And that doesn't mean stop resisting the catalyst for change, but can I be inside that catalyst for change, which then actually brings you back into the center of the storm. It's like how you move from being whipped around by, in this case, the political storm, and back into that center. Where you can make a new choice through the catalyst.
So then when you say, commitment to sovereignty, is that almost like the primary
I kind of feel no. Now we're talking. I'm like because it is about the dance of sovereignty and oneness, and so to commit to sovereignty would then take you away from oneness in times when you need to be in oneness. So I almost feel like retracting that and being like, maybe it's just commitment to showing up in your truth in that moment. Or just even showing up.
I was just saying, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's like I then come back to actually it's just, and I realise we're kind of focusing on commitment and kind of that it feels such an important energy though, and I think that's the thing. It's like, because it's an energy in and of itself, it's almost like it doesn't need any other words around it. It's like it is just commitment. And because for me, commitment and freedom are two sides of the same coin, I can feel where it's like, actually, if you just leave it at commitment, you're free. Which then allows any aspect of creation to be in their sovereignty, or to feel in oneness at any given point in time. So there's this dance between commitment and freedom continually.
Yeah. Just as there is the dance between sovereignty and oneness.
Yeah.
And vulnerability and power.
Yes. Which then brings me back to what we touched on at Hub on Wednesday, which is that actually whilst we're living in a dualistic world right now, life isn't dualistic. it's like, when you say two sides of the same coin, it's like actually you could flip them both over and they're one.
Yeah. And this is you've exactly described the channeling that my guides were expressing all of this. They were like, these energies that are polarities, commitment and freedom, vulnerability and power, they're polarities when you look at them from separation consciousness.
Yeah.
When you look at them from fifth dimensional consciousness or oneness consciousness, you actually perceive them as belonging, that poles are also the same thing. They are also the same energy in two different flows, in two different flows and directions. But they are the same energy. And actually understanding that is to kind of understand the chemistry of creation. It's like, because there are some energies that can't become one because they're not the same, like they're not the poles of each other.
Yeah.
And it, and then there are some energies that can become one because they are poles of each other. And so it's actually understanding which of our energies, our emotions, everything that we are able to come into that two sides of the same coin and yet the same thing. And I love it. I love this understanding that commitment and freedom are the same thing. Like,
it's almost like when I come to that alignment, as you were talking about, in my being, I'm in and of everything.
yeah.
There is no. I'm a sovereign, unique essence, and I'm in and of everything. When those two align within me, I'm both vertical and horizontal. I am everything.
Yeah. And what I love about this understanding of commitment and freedom being the same thing is it changes my perception of both. It changes the way I approach both. It changes the way I operate.
Because for me, I can feel where it's like I seek freedom, and I know whenever I seek something, it's outside of myself, and I have resisted commitment. So it's like both. It's either a seeking or a pulling away from. But actually, when you bring the two together and they magnetize and come together, then there is neither a seeking nor a resisting. I am present.
And it's like, I think of every choice I've ever struggled to make. And usually that struggle is because I've been worried that it will make me less free. When actually the making of that choice will make me more free, because commitment and freedom are the same thing. I'm having one of those moments where I'm like, why didn't I know this? Oh, how my life could have been easier.
But actually what you touched on at the beginning in terms of making decisions, it's kind of like, because if you tie that in with things not being right or wrong, actually any decision which is a commitment to an action about something cannot be right or wrong.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah.
And then
it's
that
the
has
commitment
unfolding.
It's the commitment that is the catalyst.
Yeah.
It is the commitment that is the catalyst for that decision.
Yeah.
Which is why it's why it brings you into your vulnerability and your power. It's why it brings you into your freedom.
Because actually it's a continual dialogue between oneness and sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
It's continual.
Yeah.
It's like there is no, yeah.
And it feels like that. I don't know, there's something so liberating, to use a freedom word, in that understanding.
Well, I feel even on a physical level right now, I feel so much lighter.
Feels like there's light in the space, in the and lighter in my heart. It's funny, I'm thinking of a message I had a long time ago from Goddess Juno that said, the human collective consciousness is obsessed with freedom and has dedicated whole ages of time to exploring freedom in every angle, including losing freedom. And you know, she was saying, if you look at human history, human history is all about the exploration of what it means to be free, and whether you can free another person, and whether you can overpower another person. And like, we've had this huge journey through freedom.
And within that, I can feel that journey of seeking that freedom is a movement away from
Freedom. Or commitment.
Yeah.
You know, it's a movement. It's funny you bring up the word seeking, because my guides brought it up in the message. They were talking about power, but they were saying, when you seek power, you're not your power. That's why you need the vulnerability to be your power. And it's like, when you seek freedom, you're not your freedom. That's why you need the commitment to your freedom. And what is your freedom? It's your truth. It's the freedom to be your truth. Like,
Yeah.
and therefore you have to commit to it.
And it's almost like, actually, when you align to that, the commitment is such an inherent thing, for want of a better word. It's such an intrinsic part of who we are when we're aligned in our truth, in our sovereignty. The commitment is just something that is happening.
It's like beyond. It's beyond choice, isn't it? It's beyond.
Yeah.
It's beyond consciousness, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why I was struggling a little bit with kind of like, because it's an intrinsic energy that when we let go of it being something outside of us.
Feels like commitment survived.
So it's like commitment and freedom have arrived at the same time. It's like, then all there is presence.
And then all there is now,
Yeah.
and presence. And actually it's a much more simple and peaceful now than how I sometimes perceive now.
Yeah. Yeah. There is no. It's just this. Just follow the movement of that which is showing up in your energetic exchange with your body. If it's like, even that's making it too complicated. It's just like it's just following.
I feel like this is the energy, and I've said it once already, but I feel like this is the energy that woman described of being able to grow like a flower.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the energy into which you can just grow like a flower. And there is nothing boring about it.
No.
There's nothing over simple about it or boring about it.
It was like then every single nanosecond becomes miraculous in the sense of, you know, the way that flower is energetically communicating with its environment. It's miraculous.
And you're right, the energy that I feel in this moment feels like miracle energy. It feels like miracle energy has just flooded into this space, into this conversation, into the essences, the sovereign essences that surround this space, including my own.
Yeah.
It's just so Eden-like. And this is, I understand now why my guides keep saying that Tantra is the way to Eden. Tantra is the return of Eden.
And again, because Eden is a space within us.
And without.
Yeah.
But it's actually that miracle energy. Yeah. It's that miracle energy.
Yeah.
Where there is no good or bad, there just is the absolute celebration of that which is growing and turning.
And it feels like, because I can feel as I'm absorbing the energy, there's the part of me that wants to be really still with it. And I think, part of the exploration then for me is to be able to be with that energy and go about my daily life. Which comes back to the storm for me. It's like, can you stay in the center and still go about your life?
That's one my yoga teacher said this week. Can you find the flow inside the stillness?
And it is that.
And I always feel like that might just be the key. Because again, it's that whole thing we're talking about oneness and sovereignty, flow inside stillness, same energies.
Yeah.
Same energies.
Yeah.
But perceived as two becoming one. I have to say I love this energy though. It's a delight. Like
it really is.
It's delighting me in the most peaceful of ways.
It's all for me, and it's interesting when you say about Eden actually, and that sort of there's an innate, and I love the word delight actually. There's an innate joy that isn't prescriptive.
It's aliveness.
It is aliveness. It's life.
It's aliveness, yeah. It's that's what it feels to me. I feel like I'm connecting to a energy that maybe I haven't actually felt since childhood, because I think it gets shut down in Western society as you go through education and egocentric systems of perceiving life. And actually I feel like as I'm connected to this energy, I'm like, I know this energy, and my inner child is like, yeah, of course, you know, this is life.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because it's so hard to describe. Which then I love because actually a child wouldn't try and describe it. They just enjoy it. They just be in it and allow it to, you know,
Ignite.
give them flow to what they choose to go and do, or how they,
It's like an awareness of a flow, but also like how everything is ignited. That's just, to me, it feels like everything is ignited with life. And your eyes are very sparkly.
I feel it. I'm really wanting to describe it, and it's
I think the only way to... I think this might be one of those things that can't be described. I think if people want to feel it, they just have to commit.
Yeah.
And then they can feel it. Wow, though, I recommend it.
I recommend it. So I think I want to say, actually, just for anyone that is listening, just to give themselves permission to, be with this energy and to commit to feeling it. In the sense of committing to that which you are, which is alive.
Totally agree. I'm kind of just feeling to honour the sovereign part of yourself. That how we're describing it might not be how you feel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to not seek the description, but instead to open to the sensation.
Yeah.